Pro Football Report presented by BCWSA, a weekly recap of your Philadelphia Eagles and news around the NFL. Broadcasting live from Timeout on Pine, tonight's show is brought to you by Rob's Automotive and Collision, BCWSA, Timeout on Pine, Allstate Fairless Hills Tom LaCroix, Penworth Financial Services, Penn Community Bank, Capital Grill, Van Tresca's LTD, Independence Blue Cross, and SEPTA. We now go live to Timeout on Pine for the Pro Football Report, presented by BCWSA. Now, here's your host, voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon or evening or whatever it is, everybody. Great to be with you tonight. We are at the beautiful Timeout on Pine, right in the Philmont area. And it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. It's a pleasure to be with one of my closest friends. We have been friends for many years since he arrived at the Eagles with Andy Reid and throughout his career, and he settled down in the Bucks County area. My good friend, one of the great punters in NFL history. How about a nice welcome for Sean Landeta?
Thanks, Merrill. Thank you, guys.
Well, it's good to see you.
Great to see you.
It's Can you believe the season is beginning?
You know, I can't. You know, I always say that we wait all year for football, but in a blink of an eye, once training camp starts, all of a sudden it's a few days till week one, and we're like millions of other in this country that love this game so much. And I'll tell you, the last several years, it seems, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like every week the games have been so competitive. Obviously not all of them, but so many times the 1 o'clock games in the fourth quarter, so many of them are within a touchdown, and so many of these teams play so well, down the stretch. So football obviously is a great game. Millions of people love it, and I was very fortunate to be part of it for a number of years. Certainly not as many as you, but great to be here.
This is my 103rd. You know.
Well, you probably will still be around then, but you've earned it. You've done such a great job.
You know, I have to tell you, people talk to me and they say, "Are you excited about the opener?" Yeah, I have always been excited about every game. I'm excited about the preseason. I'm excited about the games. But, you know, the opener means so much more today than it did 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 47 years ago. And here's the reason. In days gone by, those of you who are a little bit older will remember, we saw the teams play in the preseason. As a matter of fact, the Eagles' last preseason game, I don't know if you know this, it was before you were a Giant, many years ago. The last preseason game, and they had 6 of them then, game number 6 used to be presented by the Princeton JCs, and it was at Palmer Stadium every year. Even though they played during the season, the Eagles met the Giants, and they had 22 starters on the field at a time. They played to win that game.
You know, that's true, Merrill. And when I started in the early 80s, I mean, I can remember after we won our first Super Bowl in 1986, that next year in 1987, the 4th preseason game. Now, this is a defending Super Bowl champ. We had our starters playing into the fourth quarter. Back then, kind of the rule of thumb was week 1, they'd play 1 quarter, the starters. Week 2, 2 quarters. Week 3, 3 quarters. And then the 4th game, they would play as needed. But it's so different today, as you said. You just don't see guys. And you can almost make a point that maybe the first few games of the year are like a preseason for the starters because they haven't had a chance to play. They're going at 100 miles an hour right off the bat, and I think we've seen that also.
And that's when you will see upsets because you don't really know. Just to add to what Sean just told you, they used to have a term for the 3rd preseason game. They used to call that the dress rehearsal. Play a quarter, play a half, and then the 3rd preseason game, they wanted to know that everything was right. And then it got to the point where they didn't play the 4th preseason game. They put in the guys who were just known to their mothers, give them a chance to run around and maybe end up with another team. And also the other big difference, here's a big difference. Up until this year, the cuts came in increments. Now, originally, when I first started, Dick Vermeil brought 125 people to training camp. It was the Baton Death March. I mean, they'd be out there 2 times a day in pads, killing each other. Now the number is regulated. It's 90. You cannot bring more than 90. But up until this year, that 90 would go down to 70. That 70 would go down to 60. Then on the Tuesday or Monday before the final, the regular season, that week, that number would go down to 53. But today, it's keep anybody you want as long as it doesn't exceed 90, and then whack, they go down from 90 to 53.
Yeah, that's such a drastic thing. I like the way they did it before.
Me too.
If you think about it, one of the worst days for pro football players is that last cut, because a lot of those guys are never going to play again. And they were all Americans in college. They're really good players, maybe not quite good enough to play in this league. But as you just explained, by last Tuesday, you're talking about 1,000 players. 1,000 guys were released to get from 90 down to 53. You do the math, almost 40 guys times 32 teams, actually 1,200 plus players. And now they're all scrambling on practice rosters and whatever. But I like the old way they did it. It seems like it's a little longer now. Before, for years, we'd play our last preseason game Thursday. Then the following Sunday, we'd open up. That's not the case now. The case is it's 2 weeks. I mean, this past weekend, there was no football. Next weekend, the NFL starts. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I mean, we're going into week 1. It's Tuesday, and I don't think the Eagles have declared who their punter is going to be Sunday.
Well, I was about to break that. For those of you who don't know, Sean Landeta is going to be the Eagles punter on Sunday.
I wish
when they open the season against the New England Patriots.
That'd be pretty good. Here comes 61-year-old Sean Landeta out to punt.
You know what? I will bet that if we were to line you up outside on time on Pine, you could punt the football over to the Philmont Country Club.
Well,
I'll bet you could punt it 45 or 50 yards.
Well, I tell people, I could get you through a game. There's no doubt for sure. I could punt well enough to get you through a game. After that, we'd have to play it day by day. But
when's the last time you actually punted a football?
You know, the last time I punted might have been a year or two after I played. 06 was my last season, so that's 17 years ago. I tell myself I should go out and do it because it's a heck of a workout. You break a sweat. It's something fun to do. But it's kind of a.
I keep trying to talk you into golf.
You know, and one of these days maybe I will because I'm the only one of my friends that doesn't play golf. I've told you. I know it's not the same. I love to hit balls for 20 minutes, and that's good. But golf is obviously a great game. We've talked about that. But interesting how the Eagles have not declared who their punter is going to be, and it's already Tuesday before week 1.
Why is that? Do you have any idea? Of course, they had a Zoom conference with Nick Sirianni today, and honestly, the guys won't even ask him questions. Reuben Frank said to him, I would ask you about the punter, but I know you won't tell me, so here's my question. He asked him something else. And then somebody else, John McMullen, later said to him, well, you know, I really like to know who the other starting safety is going to be, but I know you won't answer that. They're already eliminating the questions before they're even asked. He wasn't asked one direct question about the starting lineup. But the truth is he wouldn't tell them anyhow.
But I'm so surprised because no reporter could be looked at in any kind of negative way if you ask that question. 31 other teams know who their punter is going to be this Sunday. The Eagles are the only one that don't. And as far back as I can remember and before me, they've never been in this situation. And I think what they're going to do is maybe sign one of the guys or have these guys that worked out compete for a couple days against Sippis, see who they think the best guy is, and then move forward. But I'm really surprised that hasn't been declared yet.
Well, see, I would disagree with you only because I don't think they can afford to do that. For one reason, Jake Elliott. Are you going to take Jake Elliott on the first day of the season and put him with a brand new holder?
No, that is something they'd absolutely have to take into consideration. Now, the reason this could be a little bit different is the 3 or 4 punters they've worked out all have more NFL experience than Aaron Sippis, and they've all been holders. One was a holder for 8 years. Another one's been a holder for 3. You know, these guys are NFL tested ready. Now, I know that Sippis and Jake have a great rhythm, and that is so important. But I would think it wouldn't be that much of a difference just because these punters they've worked out that they may choose to replace Sippis with have all held for several years or more in the NFL.
Now,
we'll see.
Now, when you were with the Eagles, David Akers was the punter, the kicker,
yes.
Right? So David Akers was the kicker, And I believe David Akers really made certain that they kept Coy Detmer employed because he was the holder.
No question. Coy was an outstanding holder. There's no question that helped him stay around. And there were other guys that could do it. But, that is so important, those points on the board, that, you like to have a good combination there. And you're right. I mean, there's not many Eagles in the history of this team, maybe less than 5% that played. If you say how many guys played 10 years for the Philadelphia Eagle franchise, Coy Detmer is one of them. And the main reason for that is because he held.
Well, this is what, the 9th year for Jake?
Yes.
Maybe 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Seventh.
Just like that. We remember when he was signed. When he was signed, we all try to follow what's going on, but I didn't really know about him because he was on Cincinnati's practice roster.
Yeah.
When you talk about a guy coming in with a bang, to come in right away, what better way to endear yourself to your teammates and your city than kicking a 61-yard field goal on the last play of the game to beat your biggest rival. So happy for Jake that he's turned out to be the kicker he is. He's a fine young man also.
And that turned that season around.
Oh, absolutely.
But actually, the week before, I think the Eagles were in Kansas City, the first kicks that he had, and he missed a key one.
Yes, he did.
And it was the second week against the Giants where that thing went. I can remember that like it were yesterday, the way that thing kept going and going and going and going and just cleared the crossbar.
Yeah, it did.
It was amazing.
And later that year, a lot of people forget, in a very, very close game, the Eagles beat the Raiders 10-7 on a 48-yard field goal in December in tough conditions that turned out to be the winning points for the Eagles that year. So Jake, he's having a wonderful career, and he's such a great athlete that, he's a guy like David Akers that could be here 10, 12, 15 years because he's so into what he does and he takes such good care of himself.
Although I think, if my memory serves me correct, I think in the Super Bowl he missed an extra point early, but then went on to kick key field goals, including the one that gave them the 8-point lead.
Yes, he did. And it's one of those things as a kicker that obviously if your team wins and you can make a kick later, it makes people forget the early one. But I know in this Super Bowl past, when the Kansas City kicker early in the game missed a field goal, I remember thinking that could be the difference in this game.
Oh, yeah.
It ended up being a 3-point game anyway, but the Eagles dodged a bullet there early on when he missed.
Oh, they did. But I am anxious, like you are, to see what they do with the kicking situation. I think they took a big chance putting Aaron Sippis on the practice squad because he could be claimed.
No, he absolutely could. And listen, it's such a shame because what you do in the end, especially in the playoffs, is remembered more quite often. And Sippis' first year punted very well. The last game, regular season, not so well. And unfortunately, in that playoff game loss in Tampa, he had a few bad punts. It wasn't the difference in the game, but it was at the wrong time. If he'd had a few bad punts in week 6, we wouldn't remember it. Now, last year, he's having even a better year. Then he gets hurt in New York. They put him on the IR, and they bring him back for the Super Bowl again. He hits one poor punt that if you watch the replay, there was a chance they could have tackled him.
Yeah.
Right where they caught him, and if they would have, it wouldn't have been looked at as so bad, but it was returned back to the 4 and put in the end zone. That unfortunately you put 2 years in a row like that.
Oh, yeah.
That, it's a shame, but that's what they look at, and that matters.
Okay, Sean Landeta is our guest. Our location is Timeout on Pine, and we will return right after this. Enjoy sports, live music, trivia, karaoke, and more at Timeout on Pine in Huntington Valley. Timeout on Pine features the area's largest screens along with craft cocktails and delicious food, like the popular Nashville chicken sandwich or one of their mouth-watering burgers. There's no better place to watch the game or to have a night out with your friends and family. Go to timeoutpa.com today to see upcoming events or to book your next party or affair. Timeout on Pine, 2840 Pine Road in Huntington Valley.
BCWSA customers, former Phillies pitcher Tommy Green here. I played on the 1993 National League champs, so I know a thing or two about what it's like playing on a winning team. BCWSA has all the ingredients. They make it easy for their customers to get automatic updates by text, email, or phone anytime there is a disruption in your service area. You can even customize your alerts by going to bcwsa.net. That's bcwsa.net. BCWSA, your partner for a safer environment. BCWSA, proven.
Your day-to-day life is hectic between having to pick up the kids, make dinner, the countless other tasks that you got to get done. Rob's Automotive and Collision is there to make your life a whole lot easier. Make sure you take advantage of their spacious waiting rooms, the large flat-screen TVs, complimentary coffee and muffins, and free Wi-Fi. So even when you do have to stop, Rob's is there to make you feel right at home. Give Rob's a call today at 215-826-9200 for any of your auto repair needs.
Ventresca Limited, the Delaware Valley men's store, is located in historic Doylestown. For casual clothing in denim to business suits and tuxedos, Ventresca Limited has a large selection you have to see to believe. The experienced and knowledgeable sales staff can show you the many brand labels that have made Ventresca Limited in Doylestown a must for men concerned about their image. Select from Canali, Brax Jeans, Hickey Freeman, Johnson Murphy Footwear, and much more. Custom alterations are free. Visit Ventresca Limited on the web at ventresca.com. Planning to go to the game? Give LimoToday.com a call. You'll get to the game and back safely and in style. Why worry about the traffic and parking when you can relax and let LimoToday.com do the driving for you and your friends? And if you book a 5-hour trip with LimoToday.com, you'll get the 6-hour free. From sedans to minibuses to vans and stretch limos, let LimoToday.com get you to the game. Give them a call at 1-866-LIMO-TODAY. That's 1-866-LIMO-TODAY.
We now return to Timeout on Pine for the Pro Football Report, presented by BCWSA. Once again, here's your host, voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese.
And back we are at Timeout on Pine. This is Merrill, and my guest is Sean Landeta, the great punter, one of the great punters in the National Football League, and I will unabashedly tell you that Sean Landeta belongs in the NFL Hall of Fame. He punted in the league for 67 seasons and rarely missed a punt. You had quite a season. Seriously though, you punted for over 20 years.
Yeah, I punted 22 in the NFL and 3 in the USFL, so professionally 25. And it doesn't seem like it because obviously that is such a long time, but as we all know, especially when you get older, 10, 20 years goes by in 5 minutes, and I was just so blessed to be on good teams and get the opportunity, and I'll always be so grateful to Andy Reid because in '98 I was with the Packers, had a good year and kind of agreed to go back. But Mike Holmgren and the whole staff went to Seattle, so I didn't know who the coach was going to be. Ultimately, it ended up being Ray Rhodes, who had been in Philadelphia the year before. And the Eagles signed a guy no one had ever heard of. He wasn't the hot coordinator. He was our quarterback coach, a guy named Andy Reid. Well, I call Andy, say, hey, congrats on the job. He says, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. He said, do you want to compete for the job in Philly? Well, I almost jumped through the phone because I had played here in the USFL for the Philadelphia Stars, and I knew what a great city it was. I grew up in Baltimore. I lived in New York, and I thought, wow, what an opportunity, because you have to make the team wherever you are. A lot of fans just think you're going to be there. Well, you'll be there if you're the best guy. But just to get the chance to come back and play here, which I did, and I ended up getting 5 seasons here and, just 5 of the best years of my career. I wish I could have played here longer, but I did play here 5.
And you found a wonderful wife while you were here?
I did. There was a guy with the initials MR, I won't say any more, that I was very fortunate, asked me to do a radio show, and at that show I met a wonderful person that ended up marrying, and that's why I live here. So that was a great break for me.
It was amazing. It was amazing
Great
how
break.
that all worked out.
Yeah.
Sean, were you always a punter? When did you become a punter? When did you realize that you could do this well enough to do it in high school and in college at Townsend and ultimately professionally?
You know, it's really a great story, Merrill. I grew up in Baltimore, and for those who remember, the Indianapolis Colts, who this will be their 40th year in Indy, okay, they started in Baltimore, the town I grew up in. And we loved our Colts the way the Philadelphia fans love their Eagles.
Sure.
And in Super Bowl V, I was 9 years old, and my Baltimore Colts won Super Bowl V on a last-second field goal by a guy named
Jim O'Brien.
Very good, Merrill. Straight-on kicker. And we all wanted to be Jim O'Brien. He was the hero. So when we'd play our tackle football every day after school, we'd kick the ball over the volleyball net pretending we won the Super Bowl like him. Mm-hmm. And every year it's just something I got better and better at. Why? I don't know why. And I just kept getting better. And my senior year, by accident, the football coaches ran into me in the hallway and said, we heard you can kick pretty good. We'd like you to come out. So if they'd have never asked me, I'd have never went out. I played my senior year. The only school,
But you were a kicker, right?
I was a kicker and a punter, and I
You did
liked
both.
kicking better. The only team to offer me a scholarship was Towson University, a Division II school in Maryland, so I went there, and I kicked and punted, but after a few years, it became clear that punting is just something I was better at. I was not accurate enough to be a professional kicker. For Division II college football, I was good, but certainly not enough for the NFL. But just very lucky. It's something I got better and better at, and I think you remember this story, and I have a great picture, and I have it framed. The first letter I ever got at Towson in 1981, when I was a junior, was from the Philadelphia Eagles, general manager, a guy named Harry Gamble. And I still have that letter. I have it framed. And when I first came to Philadelphia and did the show with you, it was with you and Harry Gamble.
Yeah.
And I remember I brought that letter in one day, and I took a picture with him. And it's one of my most prized pictures, because every kid when you're young are hoping one day maybe I can play in the NFL. And I told Harry, you'll never understand what that did for me mentally, to get a letter from a pro team telling me they know who you are and we're looking at you. And it was just wonderful, as you can imagine, and just great to spur me on to do everything I needed to do to make it. And that was great stuff, that I ended up back here in the place where I got my first letter.
Now, your special teams coach, for the most part, with the Eagles was John Harbaugh. And John Harbaugh told me, and he meant this sincerely, that Sean Landeta had the greatest leg speed he had ever seen. Was this something natural? Was this something that was the result of working out and strengthening it? Or was it always just there?
It was a combination. For years and years, I played soccer. I ice skated.
Did you?
I took when I say ice skated, we would play hockey every winter on the ice. So thousands of hours of skating. I took 2 or 3 years of martial arts with thousands of kicks being thrown very fast. So all through my teenage years, I was doing stuff for fun that turned out to be the best thing I could do to develop what I ended up being was a punter. And so there's no question that all those things helped with my leg snap and my leg speed to be able to kick the ball. And that has so much to do with, it's physics. You strike the ball, speed and mass, and it goes higher and farther. But, I remember John had mentioned that to me. And, part of that was just natural. But all those years, thousands and thousands of hours and things I did for fun, which, oh, by the way, happened to be the best thing I could do if I was training for it. So that was a little bit lucky, too. That was a little lucky.
Has punting changed? Now, one of my favorite guys, I have to tell you this, I loved him when I saw him at Utah. I thought he had a great year, a very, very good year last year, is Britton Covey. At the moment, we don't really know who's going to be the punt returner for the Eagles, because Britton Covey pulled a hamstring, and he is still on the practice squad. So if he's not elevated, I would imagine it's going to be Alameda Zacchaeus. But we'll see. But the thing is, it's very difficult to be a punt returner today, because it seems that the emphasis is not so much on distance, but on hang time. And a lot of the punts are 45 yards and in the air for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, and not only that, in the last 15 years, we've seen the Australian-style punt, where these balls not only go end over end like a kickoff, but they actually go sideways. Very difficult to catch that ball, where you've caught hundreds and hundreds of spirals. Okay, that makes it a little bit easier. So there's no question it takes more skill today to do that. And you really got to have a guy back there that knows what he's doing, because, I tell people, we go back to 1990, and you remember this game. That year we won our second Super Bowl. And that year I always said if we'd have played the Eagles 10 times, we might have won 2 or 3. The only reason we won opening night up in New York is because the Eagles had punt returners that fumbled 2 punts. And at halftime, they had 3 guys back there. They were having punt return tryouts, and Dave Meggett returned a punt for a touchdown. And even with all that, we only won by 7. 10 weeks later, we went to Philadelphia 10-0 and got soundly beaten. And to me, there's no question that if they have Dave Meggett as their punt returner, they probably win that game. they might have been 10-0 after 10 weeks, because that Eagles team, as you know, in 1990 and 91, might be one of the greatest teams to never get to a Super Bowl, and so many times it's just because of one play or one game.
Do you want to hear something interesting? I don't know if even you know this, but last year, I believe Britton Covey, if yes, most people, what'd you think of Britton Covey? They'd say he's okay. He had a good return in the Super Bowl, but he was okay. Do you realize that Britton Covey averaged something like 9.6 yards per punt return, which was more than what Darren Sproles, Danny Amendola, and Wes Welker averaged as a rookie returning punts?
You know, I'm glad you pointed that out, because sometimes the expectation is so much from fans. And I understand fans want all their players on their team to play great. But again, in this day and age where it's hard to return punts because they're punting differently, they're punting away from guys, to basically average 10 yards a return, that's really terrific. And that should be pointed out to give fans an idea what a great job he did as such a young returner. You're talking about some pretty big names there.
Absolutely. The other thing is, punt returners are rarely blazers. I mean, they're more quick than they are fast. I think of the best that I've ever seen. Meggett was very, very good. Yeah. But he wasn't a 4.3 guy.
No.
He's probably a 4.7 guy.
Yes, correct.
Something in that
Yes.
area. Vi Sikahema. You all remember Vi Sikahema when he returned the punt against the Jets and punched the goalpost. Vi Sikahema was not in that 4.3, 4.4 category. He was probably the same as Meggett, around 4.7. And then you look at somebody. Now, there was one great one who did have blazing speed, and he might have been the best I ever saw, was Devin Hester.
No, I agree with you. Devin Hester will be in the Hall of Fame. His skill as a returner was amazing, but I think what made him so good is what you're saying, is that it's more the vision and the ability to see and make a decision so quickly, because things happen so fast, that is what makes the better punt returner that skill set more than the speed. Now, you get that guy with vision, with crazy speed, you have Devin Hester, which is a very special guy. And another guy who was an excellent punt returner in his day was Deion Sanders. Many people remember what a great defensive back he was, and absolutely he was, but he also was an excellent punt returner. Again, he had great vision, and he could see things because they happened so quickly.
Well, what an athlete. I mean, to play Major League Baseball and NFL football.
No, I agree, and a lot of people forget this. Think about this. In a World Series, in 6 or 7 games, not in 4 or 5 at-bats, in 15, 16 at-bats, I think he hit 429.
Wow.
He had one of the greatest World Series of any Major League player, and people just totally forget that. I mean, guys in the Hall of Fame that we all know who are great baseball players and played in World Series never had a World Series as good as Deion Sanders has, and that really gets forgotten. Be interesting. I hope if anybody's listening, they'll take a minute to look it up, and they'll be surprised.
It's amazing.
Like, wow. He didn't just do it for 1 or 2 games. He did it for the whole series.
And now look at what he's done. He goes and he coaches for the first time at a historically black college, Jackson State, and does a great job. And he takes 2 sons with him, a quarterback and a defensive back, becomes the head coach at Colorado, and upsets heavily favored TCU last Saturday.
Yeah, what a story. You know, I think that's so good for college football. I mean, there's no question, and this is no kind of a knock, but they said a record 86 new players were on this college roster. I think they only kept 7 guys. But those 86 guys were all stars from other colleges. They just weren't guys who transferred. These guys were starters, high-ranked guys. So, you know, he has a team full of terrific players, and obviously they're all there because they want to play for Deion Sanders.
They must have had 100 NIL deals. They bought a team.
That basically.
I mean, that's the case of college football today with the transfer portal and all of that. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Sean Landeta right after this.
Enjoy sports, live music, trivia, karaoke, and more at Time Out on Pine in Huntington Valley. Time Out on Pine features the area's largest screens, along with craft cocktails and delicious food, like the popular Nashville chicken sandwich or one of their mouth-watering burgers. There's no better place to watch the game or to have a night out with your friends and family. Go to timeoutpa.com today to see upcoming events or to book your next party or affair. Time Out on Pine, 2840 Pine Road in Huntington Valley.
This is Tommy Green from the 1993 National League champion Phillies. And here's the pitch. BCWSA water and sewer customers, you have a new and improved option to pay your bill that's convenient, reliable, and secure. Powered by Invoice Cloud, you can pay your bill 24/7 online, pay by text or phone, or sign up for AutoPay to avoid fees for late or missed payments. Visit bcwsa.net to sign up or for more info. That's bcwsa.net. BCWSA, proven.
At Penn Community Bank, we're not just your bankers, we're your neighbors. That comes in handy when you're purchasing your first place, refinancing an existing mortgage, buying a second home or investment property, or looking to tap into your home's equity. Whatever your situation, we pair the latest products, services, and technology that you need with the experienced banking professionals you want. Visit penncommunitybank.com or stop by your local branch to find out how we can make your family's growth personal. Penn Community Bank. Here we are and here we grow. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
When an Eagles player gets hurt, the team takes care of him. When you get hurt, the attorneys at Begley, Carlin, and Mandio will take care of you. They understand that a severe accident can be a life-altering event. You need a reliable teammate to fight for you. The attorneys at Begley, Carlin, and Mandio will get you great results. And if there's no recovery, there's no fee. Contact them today at 215-750-0110 for a free consultation. 215-750-0110 for a reliable ally that's on your side. Planning to go to the game? Give LimoToday.com a call. You'll get to the game and back safely and in style. Why worry about the traffic and parking when you can relax and let LimoToday.com do the driving for you and your friends? And if you book a 5-hour trip with LimoToday.com, you'll get the 6-hour free. From sedans to minibuses to vans and stretch limos, let LimoToday.com get you to the game. Give them a call at 1-866-LIMO-TODAY. That's 1-866-LIMO-TODAY.
We now return to Time Out on Pine for the Pro Football Report, presented by BCWSA. Once again, here's your host, voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese.
And back we are, Time Out on Pine, Merrill Reese and Sean Landeta. So many interesting things happening. We just moved over for a moment to college football and how that game has changed with the transfer portals and the name, image, likeness fees that players are able to get and teams line up for them. It's an amazing thing. It's changed the whole landscape of the game. The conferences are going crazy with this team going here and that team going there, and and geography has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what's happened. I mean, all of us, many of us have followed college football for years, and it, like the NFL, has great history and rivals, but it's amazing how in the last 5-10 years, especially the last 5, the way things have changed. I just had a buddy of mine earlier today tell me that Arch Manning, who is the grandson of Archie Manning, he will make more this year as the backup for the quarterback at Texas than Joe Burrow will make for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Are you serious?
And the quarterback at USC will make double of what Trevor Lawrence makes in Jacksonville.
Oh, my goodness.
There are
Caleb Williams.
Correct. There's about a dozen college kids that are making more than NFL starting quarterbacks.
Is that amazing?
It really is. And I have to tell you, I'll mention this name. I told him I'd give him credit for it because he's a dear friend of ours, and I just talked. John Telchik was a punter here back in the mid-'80s. Wonderful guy. Great punter. And, I keep in touch with John, and he was telling me how down in SMU, how they're trying to handle the NIL. But they have a little slogan down there now because if anybody remembers, we're going back 40 years, SMU was one of the first teams given the death penalty because of how they were paying players with Ron Meyer and Eric Dickerson and Craig James and that crew.
The Pony Express.
That's correct. But now they've kind of used they have a little joke. They're saying that what they call this NIL which stands for name, image, and likeness.
Yeah.
Well, relating to the SMU situation, that what they did back there was against the law, SMU calls NIL, now it's legal.
Yeah.
Which basically what they're saying is we did all this 40 years ago. The only problem, we weren't allowed to.
Well,
today, you're allowed to.
I mean, look at the big to-do involving Johnny Manziel, where he accepted money for signing pictures when he was at Texas A&M. Now, he's let his life. There's a documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Johnny Football. And you look at him, and he's pathetic. He's just going downhill at a warp speed.
It is such a shame. I have not seen it. A lot of my friends have. And, people that watch football, this young man was a very exciting college football player.
That's the key.
I thought if he got into the right situation, he might have been a good backup. Or
Yes.
if you needed the guy to come in, and especially a change of pace guy
Yes.
to the NFL-style quarterback, maybe he could have a nice career there. But certainly his talent was looked at differently. He was picked where he shouldn't have been picked, and it all went south. And I'm so sad to hear that based on this documentary, you watch it, and the word, again, it's an awful word, but he's pathetic.
He is pathetic.
And this is a guy who 7-8 years ago the whole country was excited about. He was such a fine player. He won the Heisman Trophy. And
as a freshman,
think about how beyond ridiculous that is. But if this would have been around 8-10 years ago, all of that would have been legal. And who knows if maybe he'd have been different. But what a shame that's worked out for that young man. I have to watch it. I haven't seen it.
Sean, this week, the Eagles are opening their season in Foxborough against a friend of yours by the name of Bill Belichick. You know him as well as anybody because you remember the New York Giants when Belichick was the defensive coordinator. And there are a lot of people that think he's kind of a tough, grizzly, grumpy, unfriendly type of guy. Your experiences with Belichick are quite different.
Yeah, they are. I mean, Bill certainly is a very, he's very animated. He's very serious. He is all business intense, and that can come across a certain way. And he has a rough edge. Look, I mean, this was a guy that, I think next year will be his 50th year as a coach in the NFL.
Wow.
Think about that. Not coaching. In the NFL will be his 50th year. And, he was brought up by old school guys, very serious. But like anybody, if you know him personally, he's very different. But he's been a great head coach through the years. There's no question about it. I know since, people want to say, well, since Brady's left, it hasn't been the same. Well, any coach that would lose a great quarterback. I think if Andy Reid didn't have Patrick Mahomes, do you think things might be different? I think so.
I think so.
And he not only lost Tom Brady, but he lost Gronk. So if Andy lost Mahomes and Kelsey, things would be different?
Of course
Absolutely.
they would. Of course
so it's
they
a little
would.
unfair to ask the guy to win when he doesn't have the same things. Not to mention all the other great players he had. But he's still a really good football coach, and I'm not expecting an easy game Sunday. I hope I'm wrong, that the Eagles win handily, but I think it'll be a tough game. But I do expect the Eagles to win.
I'm anxious to see what the Patriots look like. They do not have a quarterback who has achieved that much early in his career, and Mac Jones, who came from Alabama. But on the other hand, he's a bright young man. He's got some physical skills, and they have the same guy as the offensive coordinator who worked with him at Alabama after working at Penn State as a successful head coach, and then going to the Houston Texans, and that's Bill O'Brien. He's their O coordinator.
There's no question that will help him, that will make him be better. Last year, Jones is a competitor, and as a young guy, not in a bad way, but he said some things of how he felt that sometimes should be kept in-house. But they're hoping that he will do something like Jalen Hurts did. Hurts, his first year as a starter, I thought did well. The jump he made last year was amazing. He became so much better, and now he's established himself as, I think, one of the best quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
I don't believe Jones will be Hurts, but what I'm saying here is the Patriots are hoping he'll make a jump in his second year, and with better people around him, that he'll play better, and therefore the Patriots will be better.
What worries me a little bit is the atmosphere at Schaefer Stadium in Foxborough. I mean, the fact that it's going to be crazy. this is a day that they have picked to honor Tom Brady. He's coming back, and the game's going to be on CBS television along with WIP and the Eagles Radio Network. But the game will be the biggest game of the year with the Jim Nantz there and Tony Romo and the whole CBS crew. It'll be huge, and that stadium is going to be rocking.
No, it will. And listen, there's no accident. It's no accident that of all those home games that they could have chosen to honor Brady,
oh yeah,
they brought him for this one because they know they're going to need all the help they can against a terrific Eagles team. And I have no doubt that Coach Sirianni will have his guys ready. I believe his guys will be ready, and as you said, it will be very festive up there, and should be a terrific ball game.
You say you think they'll be ready. You feel good that they'll be ready, and I think that they'll be as ready as they can be, having not played together at all during the season other than combined drills and on the practice field. That being said, how do they get a special teams units together? Because during the summer, special teams units are mix and match, and fourth-string guys and fifth-string guys. I think it's tough to find 11 guys each time you have to send a punt returner unit out or a kickoff coverage unit out. It's really mix and match.
It is. That's a great point you bring up. It's something that a lot of the fans may not pay attention to, but one of the good things if you have a veteran ball club is even though you're trying different guys out, the first day of training camp, if you have a veteran ball club, you know that 6 or 7 guys of that 11 on that punt team will be there. That's not the case this year or even last year, and there has been some breakdowns. So they're going to have to find guys pretty quick. I'm sure they're going over it every day because the more reps you work together, the more, you become a cohesive group. But there's no doubt that makes a difference, and I'm excited to see how that plays out too because, everything's 100 miles an hour now, and you might have been left tackle in second preseason game and the right guard in the third preseason game, but now you have a different position to play, so we'll see how they
The
go.
other thing that bothers me is two of the core guys on those special teams last year were Sean Bradley and Zach McPherson, and both are after the season with torn not ACLs, Achilles tendons.
Yeah, that will be a factor. There's no question. I mean, I think they can fill in and play well, but there's no doubt. At least I don't expect the special teams to be as good because, having veterans, you go so far. I mean, when I think back when I was here, my up-backs were Eric Bieniemy and Brian Mitchell, tested veterans. I had Ike Reese. I had Mike Caldwell. I had guys that were veterans, core special teams guys, and, we had a terrific group. So we'll see how this new group works out.
Sean Landeta is our guest. Sean, when you look at this Eagles team, I look at the front four, and I look at the fact that they have a rookie, Jalen Carter, who everybody can't wait to see. Saw him very little in the preseason, but he is a force. And then people have forgotten about Jordan Davis, who was the number 1 pick last year, but his efforts were somewhat thwarted by a concussion and a high ankle sprain. But I think with Jordan Davis as a run stopper, and you with Jalen Carter as a pass rusher, and then you add the edge rushers, the kid they picked with the 30th pick in the draft, Nolan Smith. You have Hassan Reddick, who had 19.5 sacks, including the playoffs last year. I mean, and then still, Fletcher Cox is a leader. You can put him in. You can't play him every down, but you put him in. And then there's Josh Sweat, who last year stepped up, and he was prolific as a pass rusher. If I were Mac Jones, I would be having nightmares.
Well, believe me, he and that offensive line in New England, they know what they're facing. It's going to be very difficult. And you said, as good as they were last year, they're even going to have a few more people. And, we can't wait to see them unleashed because we all know what a big deal it is to have a defensive line that can put pressure on a quarterback. It just changes everything. And, you mentioned those numbers. I know we talked about it before. One of the biggest disappointments in the Super Bowl is those 3 on the defensive line. You never thought going into that game that between the 3 of them there would be a total of 3 tackles. They each only had 1 tackle in that game when they were great all year. But listen, this is a new year, and I can't wait to see these guys go.
I can't either. I can't wait to see the best receiving corps the Eagles have ever had. And I say that meaning Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and that third guy, Dallas Goedert. Those 3 are amazing. Some people say, well, you're not showing respect to your partner in the booth, Mike Quick, who played with Harold Carmichael. Well, yes, I am, because you have to remember that when Mike and Harold played together, Mike was a rookie who only had 10 receptions that year, and Harold was at the tail end of his career and moved on to Dallas for a few games the next year. So, but if you look at this team, this group of receivers, I think they're better than what we saw with Jeremy Maclin and Deshaun Jackson. They were great, but you didn't have three like this.
No, I agree with you. And again, that's no slight to those other guys. They were all outstanding, but you know, these two Eagles receivers are unbelievable. I've said to a number of people around the league that I talk to, as far as, you know, having personnel, you know, I say take the Giants, for example. If you just gave the Giants the Eagles receiver and tight end and no one else, they might win 4 more games.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock to their guys. It just shows you how great the Eagles receiver and tight end is. You know, you put these three on any team, they would be so much better because they're so good. And, boy, they're all still relatively young. Just, you know, you hope somehow that these guys can be Eagles for 5, 7, 8 years, and what a run this team could have.
We'll take a break, and then we'll hear how Sean Landeta evaluates the NFC East and the rest of the NFL right after this.
Enjoy sports, live music, trivia, karaoke, and more at Time Out on Pine in Huntington Valley. Time Out on Pine features the area's largest screens, along with craft cocktails and delicious food, like the popular Nashville chicken sandwich or one of their mouth-watering burgers. There's no better place to watch the game or to have a night out with your friends and family. Go to timeoutpa.com today to see upcoming events or to book your next party or affair. Time Out on Pine, 2840 Pine Road in Huntington Valley.
I SEPTA Philly. I SEPTA Philly. I SEPTA Philly.
I take SEPTA so I never miss tip-off.
I do not have time to deal with traffic.
I don't have a car. Do you know how expensive parking is?
I take the Broad Street line to all the games.
I ride the bus.
I ride the train and the subway.
I set my lineup when I ride.
I check Twitter, text my buddies.
I watch sports highlights or lowlights.
For real Philly fans, SEPTA is the hometown way to go. Ride with us at iseptaphilly.com.
BCWSA customers, former Phillies pitcher Tommy Green here. I played on the 1993 National League champs, so I know a thing or two about what it's like playing on a winning team. BCWSA has all the ingredients. They make it easy for their customers to get automatic updates by text, email, or phone anytime there is a disruption in your service area. You can even customize your alerts by going to bcwsa.net. That's bcwsa.net. BCWSA, your partner for a safer environment. BCWSA, proven.
At Penn Community Bank, we're not just your bankers, we're your neighbors. That comes in handy when you're purchasing your first place, refinancing an existing mortgage, buying a second home or investment property, or looking to tap into your home's equity. Whatever your situation, we pair the latest products, services, and technology that you need with the experienced banking professionals you want. Visit penncommunitybank.com or stop by your local branch to find out how we can make your family's growth personal. Penn Community Bank. Here we are and here we grow. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Planning to go to the game? Give LimoToday.com a call. You'll get to the game and back safely and in style. Why worry about the traffic and parking when you can relax and let LimoToday.com do the driving for you and your friends? And if you book a 5-hour trip with LimoToday.com, you'll get the 6-hour free. From sedans to minibuses to vans and stretch limos, let LimoToday.com get you to the game. Give them a call at 1-866-LIMO-TODAY. That's 1-866-LIMO-TODAY.
Your day-to-day life is hectic between having to pick up the kids, make dinner, the countless other tasks that you got to get done. Rob's Automotive and Collision is there to make your life a whole lot easier. Make sure you take advantage of their spacious waiting rooms, the large flat-screen TVs, complimentary coffee and muffins, and free Wi-Fi. So even when you do have to stop, Rob's is there to make you feel right at home. Give Rob's a call today at 215-826-9200 for any of your auto repair needs.
We now return to Time Out on Pine for the Pro Football Report, presented by BCWSA. Once again, here's your host, voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese.
And back we are, Merrill Reese, Sean Landeta. So tell me, my good friend, how are they going to finish in the NFC East?
I feel like most people do. You know, we always preface with this with injuries aside, because we all know how that can drastically change things in a split second. But if the Eagles are relatively healthy, I fully expect them to win the NFC East again. I think their talent level is better than any other team. I think Dallas, once again, has very good talent. Certainly expect them to win 10 games, maybe more. Giants, I'm not so sure about. The Giants had a tremendous turnaround last year. They went from 4-13 to 9-8 and a playoff win on the road before they came here and lost to the Eagles. I'm not sure they're going to have that same year. They could, but it's going to be much more difficult. The Giants, 4 of their first 6 games this year are on the road, and 5 are against playoff teams. Now, they were a playoff team too, but that's a tough road to hoe in your first 6. Interesting to see how they work out, but there's no question that those 3 teams will be competitive. In Washington, I say the same thing every year. You know, if Washington would have won one more game last year, all 4 NFC East teams would have made the playoffs. Think about that. Washington, no one ever talks about, but they're always around 500, and they will always win a couple games. They will always beat somebody you don't think they'll beat, and, you know, they're just a nemesis. You know, people don't think I'm serious, but they were 8-1. This wasn't a team that was like 4-12. So I think it'll be another tough NFC East. I feel it'll end up the Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and Washington in that order. Maybe Washington ahead of the Giants. We'll see.
See, I go the other way. I see the Eagles as the team to beat in the NFC East. They're the best team in the NFC.
Right.
But, as you said, it's a war of attrition. And anybody who sits here and says the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, I'd never do that, because there are so many things that can happen. You can be the greatest optimist in the world and say if everything goes right, if all the pieces fall into place. But we don't know that. The pieces rarely fall into the place. Sometimes you have to pick up some of those pieces and glue them back, or go out and get new pieces on the spur of the moment. That's what they did in 17, where they went out and they brought in LeGarrette Blount, and halfway through the season they got Jay Ajayi, and then they picked up, as we discussed, Jake Elliott off the practice squad, and this and that, and put it all together, and you had a Super Bowl champion. So a lot of things have to happen. But I think the Eagles are the team to beat, certainly in the NFC East. My number 2 team is the Giants. And I have always liked the young quarterback. I like Daniel Jones. I think he's a good young quarterback. I think he's going to continue to get better, and he's getting good coaching now. And I think the Cowboys will fall a little bit. They got rid of their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. I don't think Mike McCarthy is a great coach. I think they're going to take a little dip this year and finish 3rd. And while I love Ron Rivera, I think he's a great guy. I think he's a good coach. He doesn't have enough talent there to climb much higher until they bring in another few pieces. Maybe Sam Howell will turn out to be a good quarterback, but this is the first time he's getting the keys to the car.
Yeah, I can understand that. It will be interesting to see how the Dallas and Giants play out. You know, they open up week 1 in New York, you know, and I feel, again, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think if the Giants lose that game, that would hurt them more than it would hurt Dallas if they lost. And the reason I say that is because the Giants, 4 of their first 6 are on the road. They open up at home against Dallas. Then they have to go to the Cardinals, which everybody says, oh, that'll be easy. Well, remember last year the Eagles needed a last-second field goal to beat the Cardinals. Then 4 days later they have to go to San Francisco. Then they have to play a Seattle playoff team back home. So, you know, a lot of things can and will happen. But as you reiterated before, everything doesn't always fall into place. And people get hurt, and you got to fill people in. But Daniel Jones absolutely was better. And there's no question if he could get more help in his receivers, and hopefully their new tight end up there who was outstanding with the Raiders, Waller.
Oh, Darren Waller is good.
If he can be the player he was before, that could kind of be a steal for them. But I agree with the Eagles, absolutely the best team in the NFC East, and certainly expect them to be number 1 again.
And I do think Brian Daboll is the best coach they've had in years.
Oh, he's terrific. I mean, what he did, again, in the NFL to go from 4 wins to 9 wins in 1 year is so difficult to do. And, you know, he did it. He did it with guys, you know, off the practice squad. He did it with 4th, 5th, and 6th receivers. You know, it's amazing the job he did. And, you know, again, I know they've tried to improve that, but we'll see how they do. You know, week 1, obviously we're all excited to see week 1, but right off the bat, you know, you have some games in week 1 that you never know at the end could be the difference because there's only 17.
Couple of teams to watch in the NFC. Detroit. They took a big step last year. Dan Campbell has them playing well, and Goff played well. And in the AFC, I just watched Hard Knocks, and I love what I've seen of Aaron Rodgers. They had a great defense last year. They needed a quarterback. I've watched him. He is so meticulous in his handoffs, everything he does, and he's been working with the young players. I love they had a joint practice with Carolina. He walked over to Bryce Young and said, "I'm a fan of yours. I just want to wish you the best." I like the way he's going to lift this team. I think the Jets are going to surprise a lot of people. And on the other end, I see a team like San Francisco, who met the Eagles in the championship game. I think they're going to go downhill because they're really depending on Brock Purdy, who was Mr. Irrelevant last year, to be their quarterback again. I don't think he has it, and I think they're going to miss. They have a great defense. Right now, Bosa's not there, but they're going to miss their defensive coordinator, DeMeco Ryans, who's now the head coach of the Houston Texans.
Well, there certainly have been a lot of changes, and when you lose your defensive coordinator, who was outstanding and was for a few years, there's no different. That makes a difference. And we talked about before we went on the air that right now Nick Bosa, he's not practicing.
He's not there.
And if he's not there, that'll be a big hit for them, to have him. Purdy, he's coming off an injury. They say he looks pretty good in preseason. He must look pretty good because they went ahead and decided to cut loose, I think, what was the third or fourth pick in the draft just a couple years ago, Trey Lance. So it'll be interesting to see if they can repeat what they did. But Purdy was amazing, won his last 7 starts.
I don't think he's that good.
Well, no knock against him, but there was a reason he was a 7th-round pick. And there's no question he had a terrific team around him. But once again, interesting to see how this all plays out.
It will be. Kansas City, a lot of people think they're the team to beat, that they're heading back to another Super Bowl. Well, let's see. They begin Thursday night, right? They play. They open the season against the Bills.
Detroit.
Against Detroit on Thursday night. They may have to open the season without one of their greatest weapons, Travis Kelce, because he hyperextended his knee today at practice.
Yeah, that would be a big blow. We all know how important he is to Pat Mahomes in that offense. In addition to that, their best defensive player has been holding out, and he may not be in uniform. So you miss those 2 players all of a sudden now. I still expect Kansas City to win, but if those 2 guys don't play and Detroit wins, wouldn't surprise me.
Sean, it is great to get together with you. We've had a lot of fun the last 2 weeks here at Timeout on Pine. We thank you for hosting us. We thank all of you for coming. So for Chris Irmer, our producer, Matt Miro, our executive producer, who does nothing here but come here and eat, this is Merrill Reese thanking Sean Landeta. See you during the season, and see you Sunday from Foxborough on the big broadcast on WIP. So for all of us, thank you for listening to WBCB, and we'll see you again next week.
You've been listening to the Pro Football Report, presented by BCWSA. Tonight's show is an exclusive presentation of 1490 AM, as well as 107.3 FM, and heard around the world at WBC.